morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Glad to be with you this morning. Welcome to our Wednesday workshop. This is number 4?
I think it is. Maybe even.
Yeah, number 4.
Number 4. Other ones were on the weekend.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, those were on weekends. So awesome. Well, welcome. We're so glad you're with us this morning in our in-depth study at maturity and looking at that and what that looks like and the task and the needs that are needed to grow and to mature in each stage of maturity. So we're just going to jump right in. I think we're just going to get started. We're gonna go because we want to honor time.
We're going to try. Man, we get into awesome discussions and then it just gets tricky. So
just keep going.
Yeah, so we're just going to see what happens.
Yep.
You ready to go?
We're going to go.
All right, let's go.
Do it.
So we're going to start with a maturity review.
Yes.
So those of you who have not been able to join us on the other videos, or even those of you who have, I think it's really good just to remind ourselves again some of the basics of maturity.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
The definition of maturity is reaching my God-given potential in every age and stage of life.
That's right. And again, remember there's 5 stages. So it's infant, child, adult, parent, and elder. So today we're going to be talking about the adult, but which means we've already done the infant and the child.
Right. So if you haven't had a chance to watch those, go back and watch them. You're going to find a lot of great information there. We're going to do a little overview of those 2 today, but take the time to go back. So Life Model is the one who developed this maturity model. And basically it's a map of where you are, what your goals are as far as where to go, and then what you missed in maturity and how to fill those gaps along the way. So remember too that maturity itself is really, really valuable.
Absolutely.
But your maturity does not determine your value.
Yes.
However, it does hold a lot of weight in your success in your relationships and just in life in general.
Yes. It's impossible. You know, this is one of those things, too, that we've talked about. I don't think we've said it before, but I think this is something that is very interesting. That it's impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will equate spiritual maturity with emotional maturity.
Yeah.
And it's just not the same thing.
It's not the same
because
thing,
maturity isn't, emotional maturity is not something that is given in the way that, it's not an act that happens. It's actually something that's practiced and learned over time.
Yeah. And I think also to emotional maturity, I might have mentioned this last week, but the emotional maturity is something that is a natural thing. That's something that everyone on the earth within us is to naturally mature emotionally, to go from stage to stage to stage. It's a natural occurrence. And so that's different than spiritual maturity. Right. And so what happens is when we can become emotionally mature over every stage, infant, we reached all those different markers, an infant, child, adult, parent, and then then the Lord and the Lord puts on top of that spiritual maturity and the disciplines and things like that. Right. Then the potential for us to do what He's called us to do is just, it's exponential.
Right. It kind of multiplies, doesn't it? Yeah. Because I do know about you, but I was gonna say I don't know about you, but I've had spiritual leaders who are super gifted, super gifted, in their spiritual giftings, but their emotional maturity is lacking. There's definitely gaps, and unfortunately, people are wounded a lot along the way. I know I personally have been, because leadership and doing leadership well is really important to be mature and be fully mature to be able to lead well.
Yes.
But then you add on top of that a really attractive spiritual gift, and it gets messy. Real fast.
It can get messy.
And it can I don't know, spiritual maturity can feel a little bit intimidating, I think.
Yes.
When you don't feel spiritually mature. And so if you add somebody who has some spiritual maturity, has some cool spiritual gifting, but not the maturity to back it up, it can just be messy.
You can't.
We won't get onto that diatribe or that soapbox, but and I think that's true not just even spiritually, but you can see people in the public sector and the secular world with the same issue.
Government officials, baseball coaches. I mean,
right,
really
yeah.
anywhere, anybody that has some gifting in an area and then they're elevated to a position because of their gifting,
right?
But they're not emotionally mature enough to handle that position,
to steward
it well,
and to steward the people under them, which is
Yeah.
part of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah,
Is adult maturity, that there's a requirement not
Mm-hmm.
only to take care of yourself, but to take care of other people well,
Yeah.
and that's a major sign
Yeah.
of being a mature adult.
Absolutely. So getting back here with sorry about that little, we do that sometimes, but let's talk about some of the principles of maturity that we've talked about before. But just again, a person's age or stage does not determine his or her maturity. Just because you're 14 years old doesn't mean you're an adult. Just because
Right.
you're 22 doesn't mean you're a parent or even an adult.
It's true.
Very true. You can be, again, my famous line, you can be 65 and have a 10-year-old child that's more mature than you are in certain areas.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
Yep. Maturity never ends. Don't forget that. We need ongoing community relationships to not only help us get unstuck in maturity, but to stay unstuck. Maturity is a constant work to be done. There's definitely stages that should be happening back when we're born on forward,
Yep.
but most of us have gaps. So we're doing a lot of backwards work and forwards work all
Yeah.
at the same time. But really what we're working toward is that elder role.
Yes.
And so we always want to be maturing and always want to be doing that well, even if we are in an elder stage and we have all the pieces filled in. It's important that we are given an opportunity to even be an elder, and
Yeah.
and it requires a community.
and we'll talk
To
about
be able
that
to do
too.
that,
And
yeah.
very important. So people need, again, ongoing maturity, ongoing relationships and community to get and stay unstuck in certain levels. Like Janelle talked about the backwards work. So to help us to get from being unstuck, we need community.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely have to have community to do
Yep.
that.
And we need community too to remind us who we are.
Absolutely.
It's easy, I think, for us to forget somehow.
Yeah.
Even though we spend the most time with ourselves, we're hard on ourselves.
very hard on ourselves.
And in other ways, we let the things go that really matter the most. The hard things that we don't want to do, we'd rather hide those, and then wallow in them for some reason. But community really is there and should be there to help challenge and grow us. And should be investing into us, and we should be receiving and then investing back into the community ourselves,
Absolutely.
into those that are under our maturity levels. So,
Another thing too is that maturity is not automatic.
right.
Every stage has needs and tasks that have to be completed. So
Right.
the person in that stage has the needs and there's tasks they have to complete, but then there's also community tasks that their community has to provide and do for them
Right.
to help them mature and gain all the skills they need in that area.
So wait, I can't mature all by myself,
No, you cannot.
but I want to.
But you can't.
I want to do it all by myself.
no.
I don't need people. People are annoying.
Well, then you're a child and you need child
don't like
level
people.
maturity. you need to go back. You need people to help you. But I mean, again, like we talked about, really, we'll won't get into, but infants, all they can do is receive.
Right, that's the first job, right?
First job.
So we have to learn to receive so that we can live in community.
Yeah, and we have
Yeah.
to have people to
receive from.
receive from.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Go.
And we have to be willing to let them in.
Exactly.
Maturity, we have to start where we are.
Yeah.
And not where we wish we were. And the quicker that we can realize the gaps and where they exist, and just realize that,
Yeah.
the better off it is, just to get the work done, figure out where you are on the map.
Yeah.
We all wish we were more mature. We all wish there was gaps that didn't exist, and but oftentimes they do.
Yeah,
So
they do.
don't be discouraged. The best thing I think about maturity is that it's given us language
Yeah.
to even know where those gaps were. Like
Yep.
we were living with them and beating our heads against the same wall
Over and over again.
But now that we finally have language to it, we're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
I can work
I know
on
what
that.
that is.
Cool.
I can do that.
Yep.
And so again, guys, the goal for these Wednesday workshops, we've got three main goals. It's not to beat you up. It's not to pass judgment. It's not for you to even pass judgment on yourself. But it's just to help you identify where you might have gaps in your maturity and then begin to work on them. And again, like Janelle said, starting where you're at, not where you wish you were. Number two is just to give you practical things that you can do to help you grow in maturity. So once you identify what they are, just give you a couple practical steps that you can do so you can begin to mature and grow in your maturity level. And then the third thing was giving you practical tools to help you help others mature.
Yeah.
So
To be that
to
community.
be that community, because you are a community.
To someone, yeah,
Yep.
for sure. So remember too that the maturity stages build on each other. You can't skip. So it's kind of like going up the stairs. You might be able to try to double step it, but you certainly can't triple or quadruple step it. It just doesn't quite work out.
Yeah.
And in this case with maturity, if you have gaps in your infant or child maturity, as we're talking about adult, they'll be evident. They won't be, you can't just cover them up. Unfortunately, they will show themselves. Yeah. So you really need to complete the stage before you're able to continue to complete the stage after. So that's tricky because most everybody who's watching this is not an infant, not a child. No. Most of you are physically adults. Many of you are physically parents, and many of you could be physically elders. And you're going to realize that there's gaps backwards. And so don't be discouraged. You probably have skills in the adult, parent, elder stages. And it doesn't mean like you're demoted to infancy or any strange thing like that. Yeah. Just go back and fill those gaps. You will be a happier person, and you will feel more whole, and you will, the definition of maturity is living fully as God created you to be at every age and stage of life. So that way you can fully be who you are. If you're in an elder stage, you can fully be that elder that our community so desperately needs. Yes. If you're at that parent stage, you can be the parent that your children so desperately need. So
absolutely. And I do want to say this too, if you have missed the first three that we did, so the overview, the infant, and the child, if you go to our website, tableandwellco.com, you can go to our resources in the maturity section there, and you can watch those again. And then there's also resources there as far as the notes, so you can actually look at those, and if you have questions, everything is right there for you.
I think we mentioned this, but there's also assessments there.
There's also assessments there, yes, in the resource section.
We haven't mentioned this. There's assessments there, so if you're wondering, do I have gaps in maturity besides what we've talked about? There'll be things that definitely will go ding, ding, ding in your mind, but there's assessments for each stage. So,
and also too, if you have, you can take the assessments there, or you can email us right there on the website, and I can send you an electronic form, and you can fill it out, and then what that does, it sends it back to us, and then we can actually talk to you about that if you'd like that to happen too. So we can absolutely do that for you as well. Yep. So let's move into just some review over the last two that we've covered. So the infant and the child. Again, the infant stage is 0 to 3, and then your child stage is going to be 4 to 12.
Right. So that means adults begin at 13.
We'll talk about that. So infant maturity. So quick review on that. So again, they just need to learn how to receive. That's the first thing.
That's a primary job.
Primary job is to know how to receive as an infant. They can quiet and they can rest. They can soothe themselves on their own. They can regulate their emotions. So that's self-calm.
I think this one's really interesting. I don't want to get off too much on a tangent, but we've been doing assessments with the different people that we're working with, and a lot of adults that are mature in other areas, this is a major one that they're scoring themselves really low in, which I find fascinating, that as an infant, many people were not taught how to quiet and rest. And so if you're a mama of an infant, a parent of an infant, give them opportunity just to be. Yep. It sounds strange because, what else do infants do? It's not like they can get up and go to work and, really do much. You would think that pretty much their only job is to quiet and rest. But it's not that. It's teaching them to do that for themselves.
Yeah, to self-soothe.
To self-soothe, yep. So if you're the one who's constantly bringing the soothing and they're not learning how to soothe themselves, and again, 0 to 3. So we're not saying newborn, they should know how to self-soothe. No. But by the time that they're 3, they should be able to quiet and rest, even out of a big emotion.
Well, it's interesting too, because one of the things we haven't talked about, but it's naturally happens in that it's the weaning process from infant to child, and so that weaning process is not only weaning off of breastfeeding or anything like that, but it's also weaning off of you supplying
that's good.
Every need for them, the self-soothing, the soothing part, the
meeting all the needs,
all that. So there's this weaning process that happens.
That should be happening for sure. It's interesting. I was just thinking about the quieting and the rest, and gosh, raising kids in this day and age is so different than it was even when our kids were babies 20 years ago. Yep. That in that, like, there's so much electronic stimulation now that didn't exist before. And so, I haven't put a whole lot of thought into that, but as far as quieting and resting goes, be careful that your child's not using only, I don't know how to put it, only screen time to quiet and rest. That will result in that being the first thing that they go to all the way through adulthood. That when they need to quiet and rest and they don't know how to handle their big emotions, they're going to go to screen time because that's what they're learning is a place of quiet and rest.
Yep.
So it's important that your child can just sit and just be. It can happen. It really can. But it does have to be trained. And it is such a gift for them for their entire lives.
Yep.
So that was a huge tangent.
Yeah, we did it again.
All right.
Another one real quick. So return to joy from every emotion. That's a big one. We don't really have time to go into what that looks like.
We have a whole lesson.
Go
join it.
Go do it. And then can synchronize and attune to others. So that's another one for the infants, that mature infants can do all those things.
Right. So mature children can take care of themselves. They, again, children is 4 to 12, so obviously that's not happening at 4, but by the time that they're 12, they should be able to fully take care of themselves. That means they should be able to feed themselves. They should be able to manage their own emotions. They should be able to identify their needs and meet them. They should be able to think clearly and be able to communicate what they think and that they feel and ask for what they need.
That's a big one.
Yeah, asking for what they need is a super not unlearned, but a major gap, I think, in our culture as a whole.
Yeah, and that's another one of those things in the assessment people that we're working with is that being able to ask for what they need is... Excuse me.
Don't die on me.
I'm sorry. No,
is usually scored low. I know I scored low. That was one of the major skills that I had to learn, was not only learning how to ask for what I need, but even just identifying it in the first place. Yeah. Yep. So do your kids a favor, and any kid that you mentor or parent, in helping them to do that, and even helping adults around you who are still learning how to do that. Mature children can do hard things. Say it with me, friends. I can do hard things. We see this. I know for you, that's been a lot of your story.
It has been. It still is. It's a spot that I've been in consciously since probably January.
Yeah.
Of doing hard things, and every day there's a hard thing that I have to do that the Lord's put in front of me to do. And
I love though that he's training you. That he's being a good father that he is. And
he is. And so it's just been really good to and then we'll talk about it a little bit in this lesson too, but just the satisfaction that comes from knowing that you can do hard things and that you did it and that you persevered and that you got it done, even though it was uncomfortable, even though you weren't sure if you're going to be able to do it, but you did it. I did it.
You saw it through.
And I saw it through. And just from one guy who struggles with this and the practice of it and doing it every day, it's so much easier and such a blessing, parents, if you teach your kids how to do it when they're young. Because if you can teach them when they're young, then it just becomes part of life and becomes a part of their identity and who they are, that they know they can do hard things. No matter what's set in front of them, they can begin to walk. They can walk it out. And it may be with help, it may be asking, but again, all those things come together because sometimes doing hard things...
You're right. The goal isn't I can do hard things all by myself and not with anybody else and be so independent that I don't need a community. That's true. That's not the goal.
And so like the hard thing might be asking for help.
Yeah.
That's part of mine.
Yeah, good. That's true.
It could be, I know what I need. I can't do this on my own. So I need to ask for what I need, but that's really hard for me.
Right, yeah.
So literally all three of those things in one.
Yeah.
And you go and ask for what you need, then you're able to get it done. So,
all right. And then I think this one's big, and I don't think we summed it up in this quite this way on the child video, but take responsibility for their choices. So children should be taught both the good and the bad, and they should be taught how to choose what's right over what they want or over what's comfortable. That they can recognize the difference between a good and a bad choice, and then take responsibility and be given the responsibility of the consequence of the good or bad choice. Everything bears fruit. That's biblical. We know that when you sow, you reap. And so that includes both good and bad.
Yes, it does.
And I think in today's society, we protect our kids from a lot of the reaping. And then they end up reaping in adulthood, and it's super tough.
Yeah.
So, and then we end up with adults who don't want to take responsibility for their choices.
That's good.
And but mature children should be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we listed off those things too, that means that, just like we said before, that they build on each other. So mature adults should also know how to receive,
Yep.
should know how to return to joy
That's
from
good.
every hard emotion, should know how to synchronize it with each other. They should know how to take care of themselves. They should know how to take responsibility for themselves. They
Yep.
should be able to do hard things.
Yep.
Adults should be able
Adults
to do
should.
those, because that should have happened in infancy and childhood.
Right, which is why at age 13 you technically can be you've moved into adulthood, because again, as an infant and a child, you've learned all the things that an adult should learn and should know how to do. So at 13 you are technically an adult. You're a young adult, you're a maturing adult, but you are.
Yeah, because there's actually something significant that happens in the brain at the age of 12, 13. It's marked in science. And so God has literally given your brain now the ability to shift from being, remember we talked about children being me-centered,
Yep.
being very self-centered, because that's their job, right? Is to
Yes.
learn how to take care
They're
of themselves.
themselves.
To being we-centered. So the shift, even in your brain, goes from being me, to us. And what
Yes.
does it look like to do life with other people in a mutually satisfying way?
Yeah. And so this age stage is going to be that 13 to the birth of your first child is what it is scientifically as far as the adult stage.
Right.
And so, again, your brain does go through some crazy things that happen. What's the word? It decentralizes, or I forget the exact word for it, but
Yeah, I can't remember the word either.
scientific word, but it goes
those big
crazy.
words.
It goes crazy.
Yeah, it does. It literally goes crazy.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So the primary goals of an adult is being able to taking care of two people at the same time.
So one of those people is you,
Correct.
because you've learned how to take care of yourself.
Yep. And the other is another person.
Just one other.
Just one other.
Not a million other, because we're not at the parent stage yet, right? So our focus is just how to take care of one other person at the same time as me.
Yep. And the goal would be like mutually satisfying relationships. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go, but that's the terminology that you'll hear us say.
Yep.
The other primary task or goal is to develop a group identity. So there's something that happens too when you become 13. You go from, again, me-centered to we-centered.
But who is we? And you're
Exactly.
trying to figure out who we is and where do I fit in we.
In we.
Which anybody who knows a teenager, knows that stage, right?
We love you.
Yep.
Any teenagers that are watching, we love you.
Yep. Any parents of teenagers, we love
love
you
you too.
more. No, we have been there.
Yeah.
Lots of times. I don't know why we kept doing that to ourselves.
I don't-
Instead of taking babies when we fostered, God just kept bringing us teenagers.
Preteens and teenagers.
So we got to do
Why?
this stage lots of times, and it's
Why?
I don't know.
That's why I'm looking tired. That's why I'm bald, actually.
It's all their fault,
all
pretty
their
much.
fault. All their fault.
You know who you are. We've already blamed you, and if you're watching this video, you know it.
Yep.
No,
Someone is watching right now.
no, that's funny. Okay, so young adults. We're going to start at the young adult side, because starting at 13, obviously, remember, it goes to the birth of your first child. So that could be very different for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And like for me, I was 20. For other people, that might be 35. So this needs to be thought of in an appropriate way, where this isn't a race to complete this stage. However, there should be a fullness to this stage and a practicing of all the other stages along with this stage.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're not leaving receiving behind because that was an infant thing.
Right.
Or controlling my emotions. Well, that was a child thing, so I'm going to leave it.
On.
Yeah.
It's a building on. We know we haven't really talked about this, but I would just think it's the maturing adults. They are, because they're young adults. They are, because when you say young adults, in our society anyway, that has a certain age group kind of attached to it.
Yeah, that does make sense.
So it's like that 18 to 25 or whatever. But it's really maturing adults. So really like 13 to the birth of your first child. I mean,
I think too, it's important to mention here too that some people will never actually experience the birth of their first child.
Very true.
And so that doesn't mean that you'll never move out of this stage. Parenthood can actually happen in a variety of ways, as we know.
Yep.
And it could very much look like adoption. It could very much look like a mentoring role. It could look like you're the most epic aunt ever. And because the definition of a parent is learning to give of yourself sacrificially, where so we were talking about child is all me.
Generation. Yeah.
Yep. Adult is me and we, right? So we and our group. And then parent is I can deny my needs to meet the needs sacrificially of someone else. And so
even
I think
if it causes me pain.
Even if it causes me pain, because anybody who's had to stay up all night with an infant for nights and nights in a row knows that pain. So know that. As we say, birth of your first child, we're not intending to cause any wounding or anything like that.
That's good.
It does have to do with that moment that you switch from me to we, mutually satisfying, to I'm willing to be in a relationship that is not mutually satisfying, and I'm willing because I'm sowing into the next generation with intention.
And I'm healthy enough to maintain my satisfaction, even though I am...
even though I'm not being mutually satisfied by the person who's receiving from me. We're not talking unhealthy, abusive relationships here with peers. We're talking sowing into the next generation in that parent stage. So let's get back to young adults.
The young adults, maturing adults.
Yep, so they need 3 things.
Yep, they're really concerned with 3 things.
Yep.
The 3 big things.
Yep, big job. So the 3 things that they super care about is
relationships,
power, and truth.
And truth. Yep, those are the 3 things that maturing adults are really concerned with. Yep. So let's talk about relationships. So what does that look like? So as children, the primary relationship is with their parents. So as kids go from 0 to 12, the primary life-giving relationship comes from their parents. Again, at 13 or 12 years old, the brain changes and it goes from me to we to who am I, who's my peer group, who do I identify with, who do I belong to?
Yeah, they're really, really looking for belonging outside of the family at that point.
Yeah, and so it can be depressing sometimes for parents, especially if your whole life is around your kids, which isn't a bad thing, but...
Well, that's why this is important to even know that the goal really by the time that they're 13 is to be able to release and not hold on.
It's the weaning process.
It is, even for us, right, guys? Yes. Like, there's a weaning process that happens for parents as well and should be happening, to where by the time that they're 13, a parent should feel comfortable to release their child to find their belonging in a peer group. It's so important for them to be able to do that, to begin to build their identity. And our desire as every parent is that they would find a healthy peer group. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I can picture all kinds of different teens that we've worked with or been around, or even in my own junior high and high school years, that this is so true. You can see it in patterns everywhere. There's high school for us was broken up into all these little groups of people.
Absolutely.
That, they're all so unique, but then they all end up looking like each other at the end of the day. You have all the jocks and you have all the nerds and you have all the goth or whatever the wording was back in the day. And it's so funny because they consider themselves so unique, but then they begin to look like each other.
And act like each other.
But that's because developmentally, they're really, really needing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can even look at it if you go into an elementary school lunchroom when school comes back. You can see that. Kids are it doesn't matter who they are, what they look like, they're all mixed together in this cluster of kids in the lunchroom. And then as you get into junior high, you still have that a little bit, and there's a little bit of separation. You get into high school, and it's like Janelle said, it's...
Yeah, you have your lunch table, and it is your people.
And you don't come to this table unless you're part of this group. So, and so it's important to give them space.
Yeah.
And a space to bond to their peer group.
Right. That is the beginning of the letting go.
Yeah.
And I think as parents, our primary job in preparing for that stage is to set them up for success in where they're going to find their peer groups.
Yeah.
So if you're leaving it to the high school lottery of who they're going to find there and all of that, and especially too if they haven't met some of their infant and child needs, you may be sorely disappointed. Finding them great peer groups, whether that's a great youth group that doesn't happen by happenstance, but even that you're prayerfully considering as you're building toward that age, it's not wrong to look for that, because it is such a monumental thing in their kids' lives. I know it was for ours, and we didn't do that with intention.
I guess we did. We actually did. When we moved from Michigan to Greenville, that was one of the things that we knew, that we one of the 4 things we needed, and one was a good church that we could all grow in together.
As a family. But I don't think we were thinking about it from like, our kids need a peer group to identify with, per se.
That's true. It just was amazing.
Yeah,
it ended up being fantastic.
Yeah, they were given such a gift, both in their youth pastors and in the kids that became their identity group.
That they still semi hang out with today. I mean,
I'm eternally grateful for that.
Too,
because honestly, too, at this stage, your kid is going to receive from you less and be a lot less interested in receiving from you. And
Very
so
true.
the community plays such a key role at this stage. Because remember, they're looking for relationship, and they're looking for relationship outside of the family.
Yeah.
And they're beginning that release from you. And we've talked about this on other videos before, but about making sure that your kids also have some great moms and dads around, maybe of their friends, that they'll receive from as well. And anybody who's parented teenagers knows that you could say one thing like 22 times, and then suddenly Johnny comes home from his friends and he's like, yeah, Johnny's mom told me this, and you're like, I mean,
dude, I've been saying that for 2 years.
That about 300 times, and they're like, oh yeah, well I just heard it for the first time when Johnny's mom said it.
Right.
So that's a real thing.
You planted seeds.
Yeah, you planted seeds.
You planted the seed.
So that's a real thing. So be Johnny's mom for someone else, knowing that
absolutely.
your friends, your kids' friends, are going to probably listen to you before they're going to listen to their parents, and take that as an honor and as a responsibility even.
Absolutely. So let's see. So the survival of the group becomes more important to your brain than your own personal survival.
Yeah, so there's actually a shift in your brain.
Yeah.
That you're willing to lay your life down for a group of people.
It's that I have, like, what are they doing? Like, I have to go to the dance, or I have to hang out with, because it's my group. I have to be there. It's like life or death. It's this thing of, what are we doing together, and I want to be a part of it. I can't miss out. I have to be a part of it.
I just thought about like a lot of parents I know have, it's like, if so-and-so jumped off the bridge, would you jump off the bridge too? And your kid's face in response is like,
maybe.
I actually think I might.
Would. I'd follow,
Like, if it was 3 of my friends, I might. And you're like, what is wrong with you? Why aren't you thinking about yourself? Why aren't you protecting yourself? This is why. The brain is not functioning in the way that it used to, in those, especially in those formative child years where everything was about me and my survival. Now being a part of something bigger actually really matters more than just my survival.
That's good.
And meeting my own needs.
Yep. So you're looking for belonging and identity. That's that part of relationship. And so what we keep alluding to is, so like, your brain's ability to quiet and rest, and fully regulate and control your impulses diminishes.
It actually does, yeah.
At 12, 13. And then you add estrogen and testosterone into the system.
Yeah,
and
hormones.
All craziness happens.
It does, yeah.
Parents, you've seen your teenagers. If you have teenagers, or if you were a teenager, you look back on it and you're like, what was I thinking? What was I? What?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a human. This is a little tangent, but it's interesting. So I'm a Humans of New York follower, and they're doing a lot of quarantine stories. And if you don't know what Humans of New York is, it's a guy who began documenting people just in photographs and asking their stories. And there's recently been kind of a pattern of kids who are telling the story about parents that they loved and lost, and how many of them lost them in their angsty teenage years. And they use those words, my angsty teenage years, where I was not valuing my parents at all. And as if that was something that they intentionally chose. Yeah. There's a lot of regret there, because many of them lost their parents in those angsty teenage years and didn't get to come back out of that.
Yeah.
But it is real. They're not able to regulate their emotions. They're not able to quiet. The brain literally shifts as it's beginning to prepare. So not that everything that you've learned in infancy and childhood is like wiped out of your brain.
Not true.
Because that's the whole point, right? Is that they're learned then, so they are skills you're building on. However, your brain's ability to do that in the same way it did it previously is just not there. It's diminished. And so we really need our community to stand beside us and remind us who we are in those years.
Yep.
If we end up being the teenager who locks themselves in a room, or only is around their peer group, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because we need to almost relearn in a way. It's kind of like not riding a bike for a long time, or this might not be right, but like almost like getting in a traumatic brain injury accident. Like that kind of sounds funny, but it's like you knew how to ride a bike. That's something that your muscles will remember how to do, but your brain has forgotten how to do it.
Right.
Because there's so much else going on in your brain that there's plenty of muscle memory and learned memory and plenty of experience that you're going to remember as you practice it out.
Yeah.
But your brain's ability to do it in that same way it did it before is not quite going to be there.
And there's so much stimulus that happens inside and outside of yourself that it's just hard to do. And this is where your community comes in where your community is super important, where your mentors and your youth pastors and multi-generational communities, because they need to help you, to remind you and to help say, nope, that's not who you are. This is how we do this.
Yeah, this is how we do this. We model it out.
In the good peer group.
And in belonging. It's such a gift to a teenager or a young adult who is learning, like, this is how we do things, because they really want to be a we.
Yeah.
And so the more that they have positive we's in their life, then it's going to naturally happen that they're going to choose good we things.
Yeah.
That sounds so funny, but that's
true.
a great way to put it.
Let's
And I think another point here too is just the multi-generational layer to this. So as we're talking about, don't forget you're a community, not only a receiver, because now we're talking about that adult stage, that this is the point where if you are an adult and you don't have a whole lot else to do in life, or you're looking for ways to give yourself away, there's somebody out there that's needing a we.
Yeah.
And that might look like your niece or nephew who's in this age range, or that may look like becoming a youth leader in your church, or that may look like going to the Boys and Girls Club and becoming a mentor there. Yeah. There's a variety of ways to do it. Maybe you have a really good friend who has an angsty teenager and you are lucky enough not to have one yet.
Right.
Taking that angsty teenager out is a huge gift, not only to your friend, but also to that teenager.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. So the second thing, and we want to go through these because we have a lot to cover in 20 minutes. So here we go. So we talked about relationships. So now the other one is power. So, and you're like, well, what do you mean by power? So it's responsibility. It should be given come through responsibility, not just given to you.
Because they're looking for that power.
They're looking for that power. And society gives them that power. I mean, if you just look at the progression of things, at 14, kids can get a job. At 16, you get a driver's license. You can drive a crazy, huge vehicle. That's a lot of power. At 18, they can vote, join the military. 21, you can start drinking alcohol legally. And so that's a lot of power. And so that all of those have a major component of responsibility that go with that.
Right. And they're definitely, like, I want to say power hungry, but that's probably not fair. As an adult, it's natural to want to gain your own power. Remember, you shouldn't now be capable of taking care of me. Now I'm looking at where I fit in the bigger picture. So in order to fit in the bigger picture, I have to carry something to the table, right?
And we all want to make a difference.
Yeah, we do. And that's super important for a young adult as well, to know that they matter and that they make a difference.
Yeah.
So I think part of the challenge comes, though, in our culture is that we tend to hand over power without it being earned and without there being responsibility attached to it.
Yeah.
So you end up with a bunch of teenagers or young adults who are very used to having power, being given power, but not having earned it or not having carried the responsibility of that power.
Yeah.
Because remember, especially if this wasn't learned in childhood, that I have to take responsibility, and I've been taught the difference between a good and a bad choice, and choosing the good choice even when I don't want to do the work toward the good choice, multiplies itself here.
Yeah.
Because now I actually have a value for power on top of.
Yeah. And this is where, we'll talk about this a little later too, but this is where you need, again, elders and people in your life that have power and that they are using it fairly and honorably and responsibly, that you can be like and mimic your life after, and they can show you how to do that.
Right.
That's why it's very important.
Yeah. And I think an important piece here too is that what we talk about this a little bit later in the tasks and stages, but it's important that you give your young adults actual opportunities to have power in the community, so that you can teach them how to steward it now instead of them having power later as a 40-year-old in leadership somewhere and they've never learned how to steward it.
Absolutely.
They're also really looking for truth.
Yep.
Anybody who knows 13 to say 25-year-old knows that they don't tolerate lying very well, even though they may be lying a lot themselves. They're in search of truth, and they can't stand hypocrisy. Nothing kind of drives them more crazy because they're really trying to figure out their place in the world and what's real and what's not real.
Even in who they are. You know, is what you're telling me about me real and true? Or is what you're saying about society real and true? So there's this drive and this hunger for truth. So, you know, mature adults, you know, have settled and are operating in all of these things.
Right.
So that's the goal, is that these things that they've settled into relationships and power and truth, and they understand who they are, and now they're operating inside of all those things responsibly.
Is the sign of maturity.
Yes.
They've made it through.
Yep.
So let's talk about the adult stage needs. So remember, in every stage there's needs, which means I have a need that I need my community or caregivers to help me meet. So I need to receive from them in some area, and I need them to show up for me. And then there's tasks. So then there's things that I'm responsible for doing in order for this to work. It's a cyclical thing.
Right.
You could have a community that's giving a ton to you and you're not receiving, doesn't work out. Or you could be super open to receiving and not having a community to give it to you. It's not going to work.
You need both.
You need both.
So if you're looking at this, so we have the adult stage needs. So you have time to bond with peers and form group identity. So we talked about that again with relationships. It's that you just need to have people that you bond with and spend time with them. And so you can develop that group identity. Who are we?
Yep. They need to be given important tasks by their community. So this comes back to the power piece that by the time you're 13, you should be having a role in your community, not just a receiving role. And we were talking about this the other day about how the church used to be structured a little bit different and how self-centered our young adults still continue to be and how we set them up for that. So for instance, society would say, let's say that there was a fundraiser at your church for someone who's battling cancer. Let's just use that as an example. Well, Johnny has basketball practice. He could never not go to basketball practice and come and serve instead and help cook food for the fundraiser. Like, we would never ask Johnny to do that, right? Because Johnny's sports are the most important thing in his whole life. Not really. There's a bigger community outside of Johnny that he needs to learn how to be a part of and have an opportunity to be a part of.
Yeah.
What does it look like? And because really this adult stage, these are the people who change the world.
Yes.
Because by the time you make it to adulthood, you're busy, but not adulthood, parenthood, you're busy all over again. Like, you've got responsibility back in your own lap, in your own house, and you can't go change the world anymore. So if we're wasting, that might be a little bit of a strong word, but now I'm getting a little direct and blunt. But if we're wasting 5 years of our kids' adulthood and not thinking that adulthood starts until 18 and not developing those skills between the ages of 13 and 18, and we're saying, okay, everything's still about you right now between 13 and 18. It's not about the bigger community. We're cheating our kids.
We're cheating our kids, yeah.
And we're setting them up for failure because then they're behind the 8 ball. Then they kind of get lumped out into life, and they're not ready to take care of anybody but themselves. They've not practiced with you. They've not practiced in a community when their brain was even ready to.
Yeah. And again, we're not saying that like anytime something comes up, you take them out of a sport or you take them out of something that they love to do, because that's also helped them build identity. It helped build group belonging.
Group belonging,
But again, there are some things that are just bigger than themselves and bigger than the activity that they're in. And those are times when, as parents, we have to step in and partner with our kids and say, okay, look, I understand that this is going on right now in your life, and I know how important that is to you, but in the grand scheme of things, this is really what's important. And so as a family, we're going to go do this.
Right. Yep. And I think, too, if you have kids in this age group that are dreaming of doing something big and crazy in the world, do it. Do it. Like, challenge them to do it. If it is about others and not just self-centered, encourage them to do it. They really are behaving appropriately, and they're living off of what in the stage that the Lord has desired them to be living in.
Yeah.
The Lord wants them to change the world at this age and is giving them the ability to do it. Now, a 13-year-old is missing a lot of just world life knowledge. They can't do it alone, but empowering them to do it is a huge gift.
Yeah, it's awesome. Also, too, they just need opportunities to share life in partnership. Mm-hmm. So it's that same thing. You know, we're going to do this together. We're going to partner together. We're going to make this happen and learn how to be a partner and a team player and things like that. They also they need to know, the need is to know how to be a man or to be a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to soapbox on this a little bit because we had such great conversation about this as we were preparing this lesson and how much it's missing in our society today. There's a lot of language in our lesson about same gender, having an opportunity to be in relationship in a group of the same gender, and how same gender identity is so important at this stage.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about learning how to adult. You know, it's not learning how do I pay my bills? How do I survive on my own?
Get up and go to work every day. Mm-hmm. It's more than that.
But it's what does it look like for me to be a woman? How do I know what it looks like for me to be a woman?
Yeah.
How do you know what it looks like to be a man? Because that's different than just being an adult.
Yeah. That's totally different. And so, in the different roles that we play as men and women, I mean, in the roles that, there's brother, there's friend, servant, there's different roles that we play. And so how do we do that? And so being able to have someone teach us that's a need that we have. So when we do become parents, we can begin to teach those things to our kids.
Right. And two, we're not flailing through life.
Yeah.
I would say for me, not having a mom, my mom passed away when I was a teenager, and was absent for much of my childhood. I didn't know what it looked like to be a woman. I had no idea because I did not really have a same gender community to teach me what it looked like to be a woman. I knew what it was like to be an adult. I could adult all day. I had worked since I was 12. That wasn't the problem, but I struggled for a really long time to know and be comfortable with me as a woman, which also brought some challenge into our marriage because I had been raised by a single dad. And so I knew what it was to adult. He had taught me great work ethic. He had taught me a lot about adulting. But I learned kind of how to be a guy. Like, I learned how to be a man, which sounds funny, but that was my model. That was the one that I was patterning myself off of, and it created a pretty big challenge for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It did. And for me, it was, my dad is still alive, and I love my dad. My parents got divorced when I was young, and so he moved to Lansing, and so I didn't have anyone in my life really that I could model being a man after. Even I had great youth pastors, but still, there wasn't anyone that
was like, hey, I'm a man.
This is how we do things. I'm going to take you under my wing. I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to grow you in these things of manhood. Yeah. I didn't have any of that. And so it, again, huge challenges in our life because I didn't know any better. And I just didn't know. Yeah. And so
there we sat, right?
Yeah.
Married super young in a relationship where I was a really great man. And in so many ways, he had modeled after his mom.
Yeah.
Who was a wonderful woman. But
role reversal.
Right. So that was awkward.
Yeah, it was.
And I was feeling very uncovered, and he was feeling very mothered, even though I was behaving like it was just a mess. And so it took us a long time, and we kept looking at ourselves and saying, this isn't quite right because I'm definitely much more of in the man role naturally, and you're definitely much more in the female role or the woman role naturally. Like, what's up with that? And I don't think we knew even until now. And I was, as you were talking about your youth pastors, I think this goes back to what we talked about earlier about spiritual maturity and emotional maturity.
Yep.
So your youth pastors were very busy about your spiritual maturity.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what they were devoting their lives to, was making sure that you grew spiritually.
Yep, and I did.
But that was your only access to men.
Yeah.
At that time, and in church as well, right? Yep. Like, we can get caught up in thinking, well, my job here with the people I go to church with as an elder or whatever is to help grow people mature in spiritual maturity. But what you really, really needed was somebody to model manhood for you.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
what I needed was somebody to model womanhood for me.
I mean, I had great baseball coaches, and they were same thing, but there was no one person that said, I see you, and this is what a man is, and let me go, I'm going to take you on this ride with me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that still exists today in our society. So we won't be able to get into roles, and we'll probably end up teaching another lesson on this. But as in this adult stage, you should be learning how to blend roles. And we're getting off a little bit on a tangent, but I think this fits here.
Yeah.
So when we talk about what does it look like to be a man, or what does it look like to be a woman, and needing from your community someone to teach you how to do that, the roles would look like this. So I need to learn how to be a child. I need to learn how to be a friend. I need to learn how to be a sister or a brother. And I think this one is not just about learning how to be a sibling. It's the same kind of thing of like just learning how to be an adult. But for me, I had a brother. I didn't have any sisters. I wasn't raised around females. So then I got into like high school and all this stuff, and all the girls are undressing in front of each other. And I was like mortified because I had no female relationships that I knew what was normal. So even learning how to sister and how to get along with other females was petrifying for me.
Yeah.
For probably 30 years, because I didn't know what, I felt so awkward in my own female skin because I didn't know what it was like to be even a sister.
That's interesting. I think about that too, because like for me, so I have 2 younger brothers, and so, but they're also 4 and 6 years younger than me. So we didn't hang out together the older I got. And so if I thinking back when I was in youth group, and even now, it's like I've always had this big brother protection type thing where you need something, come to me, we can talk, I'll listen, I'll be there for you. But I never had that peer-to-peer brother hang out, same age, 1 year apart, 2 year apart, and we're just gonna go wrestle in the backyard, or we're gonna go have those deep conversations that brothers have when you're going through things. And so it made vulnerability really hard for me, because I didn't know how to open up to other guys. I could open up to girls real easy and listen, because I was always listening, but it made it very difficult for me to have true relationship with other men.
And that's such a critical thing. I would say both of us really struggled with identity because we didn't know how to fit with our own gender groups.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Okay, so other roles that to function in as a leader. What does it look like to be a man and a leader? What does it look like to be a woman and a leader?
Yeah.
A spiritual leader. What does it look like as a man to lead spiritually? And what does it look like as a woman to lead spiritually? And a warrior. So this one's interesting. We were talking about this last night, and a male warrior. We've all seen movies, and we can all picture male warriors. We can also picture female warriors, and the mama bear, the lioness. That it's important that we learn those roles as well, and then also how to be a servant and how to serve well, how to deny ourselves and come alongside others. So the trick is, and then we're going to go back to the needs, because these are tasks of an adult, is to take these roles and not only function in them, and the community should be providing opportunity for us to do this, but also how to blend them together. It doesn't work out so good if you show up in a brother situation and you are determined to be the leader or the warrior. Or even the servant, right? Like if you show up to a peer group where everyone is supposed to be equal and in a brotherly situation.
You put yourself under them, that's uncomfortable. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or you walk into a situation when you need to be a leader, but you walk in as a brother. Now you've got no one leading.
Right.
And nothing gets done. So it's understanding how to blend those roles together, how to be all those things.
Yep. At the appropriate time.
And even sometimes at the same time.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's true.
within a group, there may be times where you have to step up and be the warrior in that group. And then you may need to be that spiritual leader. And then sometimes you just need to be a friend and just shut up and listen.
Right.
And so it's just being able to operate in all those roles at the same time.
Yep. So let's go back for a minute, back up to the adult stage needs. So one of the interesting pieces of conversation, and here we are at 5 minutes, and it's not going to happen.
No, sorry. Thank you.
But is a rite of passage.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we have come to just really understand is that what's missing in our culture today is that rite of passage to say, you have shifted from being a child into now shifting into being an adult, and we're going to commit to teaching you how to not just be an adult, but how to be a man or how to be a woman.
Yeah, because only other men can call manhood out of someone, and only other women can bestow womanhood onto a girl.
Right.
So it has to happen that way, and so that it's important.
Yeah.
And it's just very important. I think what we've done in our society is we have made the wedding ceremony
the closest thing to a rite of passage that we have. Like, okay, you've moved out of the stage of singleness into a stage of partnership, which is good, but there's not really like the concept would be that other married people would come and walk beside you in marriage and continue to train you in that. And instead it's like, yay,
you're one of us.
Good luck with that. So yeah, we would love to see and have conversation about what it would look like to revive the rite of passage into our culture.
Yeah.
There was one other piece here that we were talking about. No, it's good. Okay, never mind. There was a thought that I had, but it's not there. So we're good. Okay, so the adult stage tasks.
Yes.
So the needs is what we just talked about initially, was that I need my community to provide opportunities for me to interact with other men, other women, to be a part of a same gender group and identity, to bond, create opportunity for me to bond with my peers and to figure out what my belonging looks like, even with my peers. A rite of passage. All
those things. So your adult level task, one of the big ones is, the first one off the bat, is able to take care of 2 or more people at the same time. So that's take care of myself and then take care of someone else.
Yep.
And the goal of that, again, is mutually satisfying relationships. So where it's not something that says, I'll take care of you, but that means I can't take care of me.
Right. That would be unhealthy adulthood. And show gaps in maturity. Yeah.
So another part of that, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's really important, that I'm in this relationship. A mature adult would say, I'm in this relationship so that you're also satisfied. Yeah. But I also need to be satisfied. So when you're in a relationship that might be codependent or abusive in some way or neglectful in some way, as an adult, there's probably some gaps in maturity, because you should be after finding relationships that satisfy you, and also too that you're willing to live to satisfy them as well.
Absolutely. Another big one is remaining relational even in difficulty. That's a big one. And so what that looks like is you keep your relationship bigger than any problem, bigger than any circumstance. The goal of your existence with this person is to be in a healthy relationship with them. Right. No matter what that looks like.
Right, yeah. And overcoming the challenges along the way without letting those challenges be bigger than what you've agreed you want your relationship to be.
Very true.
Yep. Bring self and others back to joy. So again, we're continuing to practice that childhood and infanthood skill of having big emotions and coming back to joy. But now we're going to bring other people along on the ride. So not only am I able to return myself to joy from big emotions, but I'm also going to help you do that.
Absolutely.
And not skate out, not shut down, not get awkward, not try to give you pat answers. Like this, you'll see this all the time in culture where somebody's having an upsetting emotion, something's going on, and they're crying or they're upset, and the first thing most people want to do is like, it's going to be okay, it's going to be fine. Please calm down, because you're making me feel really uncomfortable right now, because I have all these feelings inside about you crying, and I just need you to stop it, because
I don't for a long time.
Because I don't like this.
I don't like how I'm feeling.
Right.
So
can you stop with those feelings? So again, I know how to return to joy. So even if I have upsetting emotions about your emotions, I can deal with mine.
Yep.
And so that way I can be present for yours.
Yeah.
And so that's an important adult stage task.
Also, I think learning to protect others from yourself.
Oh, this is a big one.
Yeah, learning
This is a big one.
Yeah, learning to protect others from yourself.
So what does that look like, though?
It looks like you learning to.
So why would I even need to protect someone from
that's
myself?
self-control.
Gosh, what
that's
am I, like an animal or what?
No, but it looks like you. So from your if you get upset and you tend to blow up.
Okay.
It's protecting people from that.
Okay, so if I feel like I'm gonna get upset or blow up, you mean I can't just like unleash that on them? They probably deserve it, right?
They might, but that's not what a mature adult does.
Okay, so as a mature adult, I can feel that I could be harming someone.
Yep.
By my reaction right now. So what do I do?
You can you step out of the room. You can take a deep breath. You can calm yourself. There's a lot of things you can practice appreciation in that moment to remember that I actually love this person and I'm happy to be with them. So you're protecting them from yourself.
Right. I think this has come into play too. I just happened to think about it in the times that as we were learning this and learning that I have gaps in my maturity in certain areas, that I don't make those your fault.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times throughout our marriage did I make my own areas of weakness that I needed to grow in, which I didn't have language for then, but like I was triggered or upset or needing something from you that you didn't have the capability to give me, and that was your fault.
Yeah.
So in that way, I didn't think about that, but I wasn't protecting you from me.
Yeah.
I was actually hurting you intentionally in that process when it was actually me that was hurting.
Yeah. That's actually, I was going to look for it, but the quote for this week that we have, it says relationships fail because people take their own insecurities and try to twist them into the other person's flaws.
Yeah. So that's kind of goes back to, though, that child maturity task that's required of taking responsibility for self.
Yep.
I need to take responsibility for the fact that I'm really angry right now and I could destroy you with my anger.
Yep.
I need to take responsibility right now that I'm really afraid and I'm going to turn my fear on you and make you be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really good. Also, another part of that too is just not taking advantage of someone. If you are in a position of power or leadership over someone, not abusing that relationship.
Getting back to that mutually satisfying.
Yeah, because it's not mutually satisfying.
So good.
It's protecting the power that I have.
Wow.
The position that I'm in, either from society's giving me or that God's giving me, and protecting you from the power that I have.
Gosh, that's so good.
And that I know that if I said this, you would do it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, because really I should be working toward a mutually satisfying relationship.
No matter what.
Which isn't necessarily like, I think that also looks like a win-win. Like I should be able to be in a relationship where we are both winning.
Yeah.
So not only am I leading well, but you're also receiving well and thriving under my leadership.
Yeah.
Not just I'm gaining power and you're losing power.
Yeah, and that's that's a boss at the car dealership, that's a parent, that's
spiritual leadership.
That's your best friend, that's
boyfriend girlfriend relationships.
All of those.
Wow.
I mean, it's the power that, and another one which we didn't talk about, but it's learning to handle sexuality in a life-giving way to the community. It's that part. If you're looking at that in that boyfriend girlfriend situation, husband wife situation, as a single, whatever it might be, it's not wielding
your sexual
power that only provides satisfaction for yourself and not for the other person.
Yeah. How often do we see that? How often do we see that even encouraged, that to use your sexual power? Because it's a real thing. We don't like to talk about it in church, about sexuality and about sex. But also in the same age range, about the time that you turn 13 and all those hormones come into play,
the hormones?
Added to that desire for relationships, power, and truth, you also now have sexual power. And that's a very real thing. And I think that's so good.
And our society has taught really that if you have
to be used
for your advantage.
Yeah, for your benefit, which is not at all how God designed it to be at all. And so I think that's great that we also protecting others from our own sexual power is important.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Wow.
That could be a whole other thing.
Oh, another one.
All right, let's talk about the holes.
Yeah, let's
what
go
does
there.
it look like when there's holes in adult maturity? So you will see that adults who have gaps in their maturity are often very self-centered. They're going to leave others pretty dissatisfied and frustrated. They're going to be in relationships where you feel like you walk away from the relationship, that you just gave a whole lot more than you're probably ever going to get back. It wasn't mutually satisfying. Even that could be in a conversation, or that could be in a longer term relationship. Relationship.
That you may see that they conform to peer pressure and participate in negative and destructive group activities or group behaviors. Again, that's that identity piece, that they're not secure in who they are. They never formed a good peer group identity and a sense of belonging, and so they'll just, in order to belong, they'll just go along with anything.
Yeah, they're still desiring that need to belong. That's so true, and they're willing to give themselves away just for a taste of it.
Yeah,
and this can happen in a lot of different arenas. It's funny, like, I think of yoga moms or whatever, and some women will become a part of things like that they actually could care less about yoga, but they're just so hungry to belong.
Yeah.
Or, I think that's really interesting.
And on the flip side of that, they could become loners and
get really
isolated.
Yeah. Because they've given up on trying to belong.
Because they feel like they don't belong. There is no group that I belong to. There is no identity for me.
Right.
So, and I can't find it out there, and I'm actually really tired of looking, and I've been hurt a lot.
Right.
And so I'm just gonna be by myself, and I'm just gonna stay in my room, quote unquote.
Yeah. Adults with maturity holes may be controlling, harmful, blaming, or unprotective of others. And I think just the wording of unprotective, or the job of an adult is to protect others from yourself. Gosh, it's just so, like, there's so much meat to that.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that can be seen when you see people utilizing their power to harm others instead of help, or not taking responsibility for their actions. That's a key sign. They may avoid, escape, or get stuck in certain emotions. Again, adults should be able to and have been practiced in returning to joy from tough emotions.
Yeah.
And so you may see adults who are struggling with being stuck in shame or in sadness or in disappointment, even in self-rejection. And usually that leads to the next thing, which is any adult that you see who's struggling with addiction is to something. It could be we deal with this a lot in different circles, but pornography is probably the biggest one that has been an epidemic, at least in our generation, for sure. And we often want to point to it being something that's like some sort of crazy, like, horrific sin, when in all reality, most men are just looking for love and belonging, and they're looking for identity, and they're looking for connection. They're looking to meet the gaps that they have in their maturity in a pseudo relationship. And so, and that can look like in the same thing with alcohol, drugs.
In the very basic form, addiction is anything that you're using to soothe or to control cravings other than relationship with people. So it's anything that, it could be working on your car. It could be, workaholic. Any of those things.
Video games, social media scrolling, all those. When I stopped seeking my satisfaction from an actual person, a mutually satisfying relationship, then and I'm starting to seek that, especially in something that's inanimate or unreal, that's a sign that I need to really take some inventory and find community. Find community. I always feel sad when we come to that conversation, though, of find community, because
it's so hard.
It's hard. Gosh, it's hard. We've failed as a culture to create community, healthy community, not abusive community for people. We're giving our lives to figure out how to do it differently.
Make it happen,
we don't have an answer yet. We don't, because it takes people. And it takes, the key though, is really, I guess, probably where we're starting. It takes mature people. And so growing in maturity is the first step to creating healthy community for others. And in turn, if other people are working on their maturity, then they're going to be ready to create a healthy community for you.
Yep.
So,
it's
that's why this is really the foundation of all of it.
Yeah, and it's very cyclical. It's just this.
Yeah, for sure.
I need to be healthy, and you need to be healthy, so we can create a healthy community.
Right.
So
good.
Yeah. It's
okay. We talked about this a little bit before, but mature adults are looking for fully satisfying relationships for themselves and others. So not only am I well cared for because I can take care of myself, but so are the people around me. That's a huge sign of maturity in adulthood is that I'm taking care of me and I'm able to take care of those that are with me on this journey.
That's fantastic.
The flip side of that looks a lot like an adult. Like for me initially, I moved to adulthood too soon. And so it looked like I can take care of those around me, but that means I cannot take care of myself. Like I instantly cannot, I don't have any capacity left to take care of me.
Yeah.
So I end up neglecting myself and then getting resentful and bitter about that. But that's a martyr.
It's a martyr.
It's a martyr.
And it's a sign of lack of maturity.
Yep. Huge sign.
It's just that you've missed it somewhere. You weren't taught somewhere to do that.
Yep.
So to wrap that section up real fast, we want to do this very quickly here. It says it's the primary task to be completed for a mature adult is you're able to take care of two people simultaneously, which again looks like mutually satisfying relationships.
Yep.
That I know what I need and I know what you need, and I'm willing to give to you what you need, but I also know what I need to be satisfied in this relationship.
Yep.
So being able to do that, and then the resulting problem, if it's not completed, it'd be the lack of capacity to be in a mutually satisfying relationship.
Yep. So I'm not capable of that.
I'm not capable.
I either want more out of this relationship than I'm. Usually, it looks like I want more out of this relationship than what I'm willing to give.
Right, which again leads to addictions, which again leads to being a loner, which again leads to being
or abusive
power, all those different things. So,
all right, well, let's talk about practical tests of what can. So, if you've been sitting here listening to this workshop and realizing, okay, so I can see some gaps that I have. What are some practical things that I can do at this point to meet those gaps?
Yeah, so one of the things you can do is just identify what brings you and someone else satisfaction and begin to do those things for that person.
Yeah, so if you're already in a relationship, take some inventory, take an assessment of is this relationship mutually satisfying? Am I asking for more out of this relationship than what I'm giving, or are they?
Yeah.
And how do we communicate? And especially if you're making that assessment and you're in a covenant marriage relationship, it's time to have a conversation about what is it that I need to be mutually satisfied in this relationship, and what is it that you need from me, and where can things
and how can we
improve?
Make that? Yeah, absolutely. Practice appreciation and bringing yourself back to joy, because in order for you to be able to bring someone else to joy, you need to be able to bring yourself back to joy. From those, what we call the big six emotions. So you have sadness, anger, fear, dread, actually not dread,
hopelessness and despair. We always
shame.
forget at least one.
Forget one of them. But anyway, so being able to do that for yourself, so you're able to do that for someone else. You need to find men and women are in a community to belong to. So if you're a man, you want to find a group of men that you can belong to. If you're a woman, you want to find a group of women that you can belong to.
And I think this could happen on a couple different layers, and I think it needs to be thought about this way. Like we talked about in the roles, it's important to practice and have a place where you can be a brother. So if you didn't have peer relationships of the same gender, find a group of people where it is peer relationships.
Yeah.
And then also find a group of the same gender where you have some people who are above you, who can sow into you, who can model manhood or model womanhood for you to help you grow toward. So I would encourage you to not just look for one or the other, but
good.
Look possibly for both. If you're seeing that you didn't receive both in your life, look for the opportunity for both. We do groups that will start again in June. It's just a 4-week group, and the goal is that they'll that people will continue on with each other for 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
But where we are intentionally just doing men groups and we are just intentionally doing women groups, and they are multi-generational.
Yeah.
And they're very relationally based just for this purpose of what does it look like to be a woman? What does it look like to be a man? And where am I struggling in being either one of those in maturity?
Check those out for sure. You also want to find people to give you constructive feedback. You want to find people that are going to be open and honest with you and just give you constructive criticism. I don't like that word per se, but then feedback in your life and say, hey, I'm noticing this, or I saw how you did this, or hey, let's work on this. No, we did it this way, so that you're able to grow. So you look for people that are willing to sow into you.
Yep, and challenge you along the way, for sure. Take on an important task for your community.
Yes.
This is so good. We're taking on an important task for our community right here, right now, right? We realized, hey, this is an area that we didn't know anything about, and nobody's talking about it. So for our community, we're taking on an important task so that our community can grow as well.
Yeah.
That may look like something completely different for you. Maybe like I know a lot of you are out there making masks and things like that. Those are important tasks for your community. If you don't feel like you're contributing to your community in this season, start to think about what ticks inside of you. What are you passionate about? What gifts has the Lord given you, and what does it look like to sow those back in? Your community needs you. I promise you, they need you.
Yes.
You are created for purpose.
Right.
And you do belong.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, what we want to take a quick look at too are just practical community tasks. So you, again, remember, you are a community for someone. You are the we. You are a community for a group of people. So what does that look like? What are some things that you can do to help others mature into adulthood? So you want to show the people that you're leading how to use their power fairly and well. You want to be a fair leader. You want to not abuse your power. You want to be able to have restraint. We need to have restraint. You want to be able to be direct and forceful when you need to be in appropriate situations. So you want to show these maturing adults what it looks like to be a powerful, responsible leader.
Yep. And again, too, the gender conversation comes in here too. A powerful, responsible man.
Yep.
And a powerful, responsible woman.
Yes. Very, very good. This is going to be an interesting one. Help young adults learn to quiet, regulate, and control their emotions in spite of their hormones. Show them that they can make it through difficult times.
Yeah, this is so good. That the emotional roller coaster ride is not something that you are strapped to for eternity, nor is it fully out of your control.
Right.
But again, don't forget, because it's way back at the beginning of the lesson, is that poor 13-year-olds, their brain has changed and they need your help. Yep. They need your help to be reminded who they are and what reality is, and that they do have everything in them to be able to return back to joy and regulate their emotions, that they don't have to be out of control. They will still feel out of control, but they need that stronger, wiser mind, which is you, to help them and to pull from, to gain that stability back.
Absolutely. And again, it could be an 18-year-old, it could be a 21-year-old, it could be a 24-year-old that is still struggling with that. And so you're able to sit and help them quiet and regulate and help them return to joy from the negative emotions.
And I think the piece of this too, that they can make it through difficult times. This is a difficult time, and many, I would say, young adults are without work. They don't know what their future is going to hold. All of us, the script just got flipped, and none of us know really what the next year, 2 years, 3 years is going to look like as a result of COVID. But so they need you to hear from you and to share your story of, hey, I've been through tough things too, and it's okay. Yeah. Like in time, it did work itself out, because we know that for all of us, that's been our story. Anybody who has age has had time to let things flesh out. And so young adults need to be reminded that what seems to be so devastating right now and so real and so life impactful will in time be okay. And you're going to be okay in this. Yep.
And then these next two go together. So you want to give young adults important community tasks, and then you want to hold them accountable.
So we were talking about, like, find something in your community to do. Gosh, it's such a gift if you are in a place of leadership or power.
Pull someone along with you.
Pull someone along. Go look in your youth group. Go look at the young adults that are without jobs right now and are wondering what they can do.
Yeah.
They need to be called up and asked to participate. Do not discount them.
Yeah.
They are our world changers. They are the ones with the innovative ideas. They are the ones who are thinking outside the box. They are the ones who are thinking in a different generational mind.
Yep.
And do not pass them up. They need you,
Yeah.
to be invited along for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you want to be a man or woman who bestows manhood or womanhood on others. So that looks like, doing a rite of passage for someone. We actually tried to do that for Trey when he was 13, turning 14, I think. And some men stepped up to the plate and some men didn't.
Right.
And it was interesting. And so unfortunately, I don't think we were able to fully complete it.
No.
But just imagine what you can do.
Well, I think it's just important identity to just have that marker and moment in time to say, now is the time for you to learn how to be a man. Like your childhood days are done and it's time for us to walk alongside you and teach you how to be a man.
Yeah.
And again, this is one of those things that I sense is stirring in Tennyson and I of a question that we will continue to pursue answering because it's not a cultural norm.
Yeah.
But there's a significance there that I think we've bypassed as a culture.
How do we bring that back?
How do we bring it back? Yeah.
How do we how do we do that and to do it well to where a young man or a young woman knows that I have stepped over this threshold and now I'm a man and I have other men or women working alongside with me and leading me and mentoring me and guiding me to be a woman and to be a man fully.
And then maturity.
Yep.
Okay. Also, mentoring, we talked about that earlier, and create or invite others into your men's or women's group. We mentioned ours. We know there's plenty of others out there. If you don't have one with intention, create one.
Yeah.
Create one. It could be messy. I know a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I did a book club in my neighborhood. I just invited my neighborhood women to go through a book club. And I was petrified of women. Petrified. Like I, again, did not have women in my life. So for me to gather a group of women to me was just like, what am I even doing? But I knew that the Lord had asked me to do it. And so, and I needed women around me. And so I didn't sit on my laurels and decide, oh, well, I'm going to just kind of sit here and wait for women to come along. But there's women all around. And most of them, I would promise you, are wishing that they were a part of something too.
Yeah.
All of us have a desire to belong and to be seen and to be known. And so don't be afraid to be the one to step out and just even create the space. Like a book club is just a great way to do it because you don't have to lead anything. You don't have to have any answers. Right. Pick a great book that's interesting and one that comes with all the questions, like with a workbug, and you're good to go.
Good to go. That's it.
Yeah, and men too. Like I'm talking to women, but
but men, same thing. Whether it's a book club, golf club, or you guys like to play golf, or even just to get together and work on cars, whatever it might be that other men want to come and do. I know there's a group of guys that I used to know that would go fishing and hunting together. Things like that would bring other men into the fold, and also I think it would be incredible to also invite those young men into those things that you're doing that show interest in those. Even if they don't show interest, bring them anyway. Like I honestly, I love the outdoors. I really wish there was a group of men that would have brought me into hunting and fishing and camping.
Yeah,
because I absolutely love going hiking and doing all that. But
you didn't even know that until you were.
I didn't know that until I was 24 that I actually liked to do that.
Yeah.
So just inviting men into those things and saying this is what it feels like to be around men, and just to be a man.
And I just want to circle back real quick because we're way over time at this point, so we might as well just be here. So to close up, remember the roles.
That's good.
As we're talking about groups and as a community, look around you. Look inside first and look at your life first, but don't excuse. I think it's so easy for us to say we don't have the skills, and so then we just have to wait for somebody else to come along. I promise you carry something.
Yes.
And so look at these roles and make an assessment of where you are, and then keep your eyes open.
Yep.
You may be able to teach someone how to be a child. You may be able to teach someone how to be a friend, how to be a sister or a brother, how to be a leader, how to be a spiritual leader, how to be a warrior, and how to be a servant.
Yep. And then if you are these things, then the goal and the practice is, how do we blend all these together?
Right.
And be all of these at the same time within our group.
Yeah, and strong in all, and have identity in all, and not just in one, because that's a whole other tangent that we're just not going to get on. But it's easy to get caught up in one role and find your identity only in that role.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you miss out on so much. You miss out on so much. If you just say, you know what, I'm a great brother, and I'm just going to be a brother for the rest of my life, you miss out on just the joy that comes from being a spiritual leader. You miss out on the joy that comes from being a warrior or even a servant, or just being a child and just receiving. So you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, and you don't want to say, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm going to do.
Right, because maturity is operating fully as God created you to be in every age and stage of life. And so part of that fullness is a fullness of operating in all the roles that are available to you, that the Lord wants to see you function in. Yeah. One last little nugget, because I think it's worth mentioning. Part of the assessment that we have on the resource page is about adulthood, but there's a section in there for young men that has to do with these roles. And the goal is that you should have experienced all of these roles and functioned in all of these roles prior to marriage. The goal is that you're not learning these after marriage, because think about it. If you've not learned how to be a kid, super hard to be a husband. If you have not learned how to be a brother and live in a mutually satisfying, pure relationship, super hard to be a husband.
Yeah.
If you've not learned how to lead well, lead in an organization as a king, not just as a priest, then that's going to create a challenge. Hard. But the priest part, being a spiritual leader, if you've never spiritually led anybody, trying to spiritually lead your wife is going to be a challenge. Yeah. And it's not, and she should not be your first disciple, or the first one to receive from your spiritual leadership. Yeah. So,
that's a tough one. That's an area where, for whatever reason, a lot of men that I know, we struggle in that area for whatever reason that is. And if you can lead other people spiritually before you get married, then walking into that relationship with your spouse and your wife makes it that much easier. Because as a man, like, I know what I should do and I know how to do it, but there's this disconnect sometimes that happens when it comes to actually doing it. So I encourage you to go find it and go do it.
Yeah. And I think that's something too that may not happen to you naturally. Like, if you realize, oh man, I am on the cusp of getting married, or I have someone that I'm seriously dating and I'm a guy and I've never spiritually led someone, sit down with your pastor, sit down with your youth pastor and say, I would love an opportunity to spend, that might look like a 2-month summer internship at a camp where you're spiritually leading someone at a Christian camp. Find a way to sow into someone else spiritually and lead them. It's important that you know how to be a friend before you're married. It's important to know how to be a warrior. And then we women need you to fight for us. And if you've never learned how to fight for anyone, or go leave the cave and go out and kill something and drag it back.
And being a warrior too, guys, is not, it's protection and it's aggression. It's both and. It's not one or the other. And so learning how to do that is hugely important. How to protect and cover, and then how to go out and attack.
And that it sounds silly, but that may look like getting back into the earth a little bit and learning how to hunt, or that may even just look at who's unprotected in my community that needs protection. Where are the vulnerable ones? Where are the vulnerable elderly? Where are the vulnerable children? And how can I fight to protect them? Where can I be their defense?
And then also the last one will be learning how to be a servant. How do I serve others? How do I serve them well? And how do I do it joyfully? And sacrificially,
even. Again, mutually satisfying, but at the same time, being willing to put aside what you would want and really be thinking about the other person. I think servanthood is a lot about that. It's not necessarily like I'm going to become this like lowly, useless,
for sure,
whatever. It's really about I'm considering someone else above myself.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, if marriage is not a place for that skill to be applied, I don't know where else is.
Right. But can you imagine if you learned it before you got married? And it's a way of life. And it's just because think about this, and then we got to go. But if your job as a husband, like I want to serve my wife, how can I better serve my wife and lift her up? And your wife was like, how can I better serve my husband and lift him up? I mean, that's gold.
Right. Oh, yeah. And that I have done that outside of this marriage. So I already know how to do it. I'm not cutting my teeth on you and you're cutting your teeth on me because that is no fun. And so I know we just talked about this very much as a man and as a husband, but women, this applies to you too.
Yeah.
And just re-listen to the list, rewind a little bit, re-listen, and think about what that looks like in womanhood as well. But we know that men in particular, we know what they're called to, and we know they're called to lead our families. And so these skills are so important.
And we probably will come back and do another workshop on these things and what it looks like as a man and what it looks like as a woman.
Yeah,
and really
I think that'll be
dig
great.
a little deeper into those. So
thanks for hanging with us.
Yeah, I think
we went way over, but this was awesome.
We did,
as usual.
I think we're just gonna say an hour and 15 minutes from now on, and then just prepare for that. So guys, again, have an awesome day. Thanks for joining us in our Wednesday workshop, and we will see you next week as we talk about the parent stage of maturity.
All right, see ya.
See you guys.